What's up? How you doing? It's me back again, Analog Attack. Morning, Chris. How you doing?
All right, how are you?
I'm pretty good. We finally reached that moment. It's episode 12. Blaze Bailey's in the house.
Yeah, he is.
And people are really excited for this episode. They're kind of keen to what we're gonna say about this album and the X Factor. And of course, the way we've come at it, this is like the second album with Blaze, right? That we
I was thinking about that today.
But it's okay.
We got to do Bruce and Paul like kind of in order,
Yes,
and so this is kind of fucked up, but
it works. It'll work fine.
I
Uh,
think it will.
yeah, so everybody, let's please look forward to our kind of thoughts on this album, Virtual 11. 1998 was the year. You were pretty grown up by now. 1990.
Uh, I was 17, Mike.
A full grown man, 17. Good age to be. And I was 19 in the last episode. Now, now you're 17.
So
I
you were
was,
19 in 86, and
right.
I was 17 in 98.
There you go.
Okay.
I was a married man. I fairly newly married man. Have no idea of any of the records that I'm going to show for 1998. There's a few. I've got a few. As always, we're going to look at the year in heavy metal in 1998 before we get into the album. 1998. Anything come to mind without me showing anything?
Mike, I had no interest in heavy metal in 1998.
I was trying to think of this. I'd gone through my like addiction to Japanese hardcore. Like I'd gone through my like Scream and Dag Nasty in 7 seconds phase. I wasn't going to many shows in 1998. I might have been listening to a lot of hip hop on the radio. Maybe.
That was a great time to be doing that.
Right? I'm pretty sure I was, and I used to like tune into Radio One. There's a like Tim Westwood show, and like I used to make mixtapes for myself. I think that's what I was doing, a lot of that, but still listening to like old favorites from punk and metal, but not really keeping up with new stuff or anything like that. So let's take a look, shall we?
Yeah.
1998, pretty much alphabetical order. A band that I like, but this is not a good album by them. Anathema, one of the Peaceful Three, Alternative Four, and Peaceful. It's one of the most pixelated images in the history of rock and roll.
What do they sound like on that?
They're starting to sort of go towards that kind of Roger Waters, Pink Floyd influence.
What's the name of that album? Alternative Four?
Alternative Four. It's an awful name for an album because you just think of like alternative rock or alternative music.
Oh, I think it's a reference to Alternative 3. Do you know about this?
No, it could be. It could be.
Alternative 3 was a television movie made in the United Kingdom that might have aired when you were a boy.
Then
it was a conspiracy movie. It was about the government was trying to kill off the population or something. So Alternative 4 must be even worse.
Well, you know what? Knowing these guys, it probably is connected with that. Everybody, let us know.
You've solved the mystery.
Or your Anathema fans who are watching, let us know. I didn't bother to check, but it's not one of my favorite. I like this band, but this is not one of my favorites by them. And then a band I think we both like, Bolt Thrower,
Wow.
Mercenary. Again, not one of their best, but it's still decent.
I've come around to that album.
All right, cool. So 1998. I'd been going to see this band a lot, but I definitely didn't see them in 1998. Here we go. Technical death metal. Really technical death metal from America. Cryptopsy. Whisper Supremacy. Now, this is like, could have been a bit of a game changer, I don't know, in the world of death metal. It was really super technical, that kind of thing. I like this record, but it's about as far as I can go with like technical death metal.
It's like listening to Running Water for me.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I actually can deal with it if I'm in the right mood. But and then a record that might look familiar to you. If, does it remind you of anything, Chris?
No. Wait, what is it supposed to remind me of? I'm staring at it, but what?
It looks like that Metallica album, like
Oh yeah,
which I'm forgetting the title of.
Black Album, like single off that or something.
No, it's the album. That I forgot what it's called. They kind of denied that it's actually exactly the same as this.
Oh, is it like that recent Metallica album?
Pretty recent, yeah. Like,
Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
but they kind of denied, but they've never seen this before. But this is Crowbar anyway. And,
There's no way they'd never seen that.
right? It's exactly the same. I mean, it's uncanny except its color. So anyway, moving along.
Okay.
Punk rock and roll from Norway. Toa Negro.
Oh man, now that is what the late '90s were all about.
Apocalypse dudes. Apocalypse dudes. Apocalypse dudes. Apocalypse dudes. Look at that. Cool gatefold.
Yep.
1998 would have been a terrible year if Enslaved had not released an album, and they did.
Thank God. Thank God the boys are back.
With
The glue that holds these later episodes together.
This is cool. It's really thin, flimsy jacket.
You know how I like that.
Right? We're not going puffy yet.
My language.
And kind of same ballpark, scary album, Gorgoroth, Destroyer, or About How to Philosophize with the Hammer.
What do you think that means?
Let's ask Gal next time. And then, Orange Goblin.
Time Traveling Blues.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Total man's ruin. This is really of its time, right? But
that quintessential 1998 stoner rock.
But good band, Orange Goblin. I don't want to kind of lump them in with many other bands.
That's an enjoyable album.
Yeah, they knew, they kind of did things right, I think. And then, okay, I'm going to show these. I'll probably show them again actually for a reason. But Death gave their farewell parting shot. The Sound of Perseverance, pretty progressive record. I like it. This is
Mike. I might ruffle some feathers, but I cannot stand that era of Death.
All right, that's okay. This is about Iron Maiden.
I'm sorry.
This is about Iron Maiden, not Death. So we're okay. And then
no, I like this album.
This is like one of my least favorite Motorhead records, but they had an album. It's got some good songs in it.
Starts off with Love for Sale, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I like this album. This is a good record. I don't care.
Anyway, Motorhead. And I'm going to show this again, actually, when we look at the album we're going to be dealing with, which is Virtual 11, the second album with Mr. Blaze Bayley on vocals. So let's have a little look at the record, shall we? Are you ready? You don't own a copy, right?
Yeah, I'm going to...
Well, lucky for you. Somebody does. And that's me. There we go. Man. You know what? I used to think that Dance of Death was like the worst, but I think this is worse in some ways. It's just so like, because you know what? I like this part. It kind of reminds me of like this King Crimson album. Like, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
I get it.
Which is proggy. It's kind of could have come from the late 70s, and then they just got all this like this awful Eddie, just like obscuring this kind of cool idea in the bottom.
I've seen worse Eddies, I gotta say.
Yeah, it's just so gaudy, and the logo's in flames. And I think this is the first album where they kind of chopped. Did I say this before? They kind of chopped the logo a little bit.
Yeah.
But you know, these colors were these colors kind of like?
Oh yeah, and the Death album has that same that same wash to it as well.
Exactly. So yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I don't know if that I'll just throw this out there. I remember Blue Oyster Cult saying that on the Heaven Forbid album, the cover of that has got like a decaying Shakespeare face or something of that nature. And I remember them saying that they had to make a really gaudy piece of album artwork.
Right.
Because at the time, the dominant format was compact disc. And so you needed something that could catch the eye. So I wonder if at the time designers were like, well, make it red because like it's going to stand out.
Yeah.
No fucking clue.
Well,
But
it was done by Melvin Grant, who has the honor of making the most Eddies, like after Derek Riggs. He's done the most. He did Fear of the Dark, this one, Death on the Road, Final Frontier, From Fear to Eternity compilation, and he did the reincarnation of. I think we've talked about this guy before. We must have done, but
we've definitely talked about him before.
Yeah, so
he's not bad. I like I get it. His Eddie is a little bit too much Goblin like, but at least it looks like it was painted, with a paintbrush on a canvas. It doesn't look like any computers have touched it.
I don't know actually, Chris. I didn't look into that, but I just think for me, because I like this so much, this annoys me a bit. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. And then the back's kind of gaudy and bright, but we haven't seen the worst of it yet.
Yeah, I know it's coming.
And I'm not a sports fan. I'm not a football fan, and so to see this really depresses me. And it all ties in with the virtual 11, and then there was like the FIFA World Cup. The World Cup was going on in 1998, and these are all like famous football players.
Is that Mike? I don't know a thing about soccer.
I don't either, but even if you don't know anything about football, there's this Paul Gascoigne. He's like super famous football player from England, kind of notorious. Everybody knows who he is, but I do not want to see Paul Gascoigne in any record, never mind Iron Maiden. So I try not to look at them. But that's just personal preference. I'm not a sports guy. People who love football and Iron Maiden will probably really happy to see this. It's kind of cool.
I'll let you know in the comments.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool if you like football. Your favorite band is with your favorite football players. I get it, but it's not for me. So yeah, that's the album cover. And one more thing, I just want to show. I want to show. This is the Japanese CD. Obviously, it's the same artwork, but there's a bonus disc, and it's got a calendar. So, Chris, in what month were you born?
I was born in June.
June. Okay, you're born in June. Therefore, according to the 1998 Iron Maiden. Oh man, you're gonna love this. You're gonna love this. According to the official Iron Maiden calendar of 1998, you are somewhere in time.
Wow, that's fantastic.
How about that?
I always knew I was somewhere in time.
And you know what I get? A medley of live albums.
Oh, that's very bizarre.
Yeah.
What month is that for?
March. Why March?
March?
Why do you put that? I guess like it's the end of the financial year and that's the leftovers.
That's where Rod Smallwood laid that thing out.
Yeah. So anyway, you're somewhere in time. So there you go. Japanese calendar. It's cool there. It's kind of still intact. It wasn't even put on the wall or anything. But useless, but there we have it. There's the artwork for Virtual 11. And this is the Parlophone reshoot. I won't talk about how it sounds yet because we're going to talk about the production. I think we might talk about the production quite a bit. In fact, it could be one of the main kind of points of this episode. In fact, maybe. It's a big factor in how this record sounds and obviously and how we feel about it.
Well, okay. I have a there's a lot of things that I have to harshly criticize about this album,
sure.
And there's a lot of things that I do really like about it.
Yeah,
the production is probably the worst of an Iron Maiden album.
I agree. Recorded at Barn Studios.
Yep, it's recorded at Steve Harris's house.
Yeah.
This is, I think, the third album that was recorded there because they did No Prayer for the Dying there.
Yeah.
Not great results. They did X Factor there.
Yeah.
And they did this album there. And this might be the last time that was allowed. And I think the results speak for themselves. Yeah. Those are three of the worst sounding Maiden albums. This sounds like a demo. There's no way around it. The drums sound flat. They sound lifeless. There's one problem with the guitars that sort of has been like building up over some albums that we haven't gotten to talk about yet. But Adrian Smith is not in the band at this point. So this is the first album that we're talking about where Adrian's not in the band, actually.
It is, even though we're going in this weird order, but yeah, that's right.
And because of the order we're going in, and they're most of the ones we're going to talk about from here on out don't have Adrian.
Yeah.
Which means you have Dave Murray and you have Yannick Gers.
Yep.
Yannick Gers came in and replaced Adrian in 1990. The issue is they're both Strat players. Yannick actually plays a classic Strat with single coil pickups only all the time. Dave Murray plays a variety of Strats and sometimes other guitars too. But some of those have humbucker pickups, which is sort of the classic crunchy guitar sound that you are used to. The Yannick Gers, I don't think I've ever seen him play anything but a Stratocaster. It's almost always white, and it's always got the single coil pickup. Now that's the classic way to play a Strat, but that's really more of like a blues guitar sound.
Right.
And it's been used a lot in rock. Like Ritchie Blackmore plays his Strats that way. Yngwie, all of his, all those white Strats that he has, single coil pickup. It is not as crunchy, and when you're compensating and you have to like push it harder to get that crunch that you have to have in a band like this, it's sometimes, if you're not careful, it can sound a little squawky, a little bit scratchy. I don't know, and you really hear that on this, and it ends up like, I know that Yannick Gers is not playing like piece of shit equipment. I know he's playing probably through a nice amp. I'm sure his whatever Strat he's using on that day is a nice classic, vintage Strat, made by hand in the United States. But it sounds like it's being played through a cheap pedal. That's the first thing I noticed. Dave, I think, is on the left and sounds a little bit better, but also it sounds like they're trying to match the two, so you have some equilibrium there. It does not sound awesome. It really sounds thin and tinny, just in terms of the guitars.
It kind of reminds me of just like kind of some like really cheaply produced like new wave album.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, because the other thing that's going on is there's a lot of keyboard on this album.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
It's not those Somewhere in Time synth sounds that we like very much.
Very much not that. Yeah.
I just, the whole, like, just on the musical side, it sounds cheap. It sounds thin. It sounds like a demo. I cannot believe that this made it out the door sounding like this.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't talked about Blaze Bayley before.
Right.
You put him on top of that. There's a lot of weird things about the way that they sort of like chose to integrate Blaze into the band, and one of them is his vocals always sound really dry. Bruce always had like a little bit of like echo, and I mean, Bruce has like a very, he's the human air raid siren, his voice just sounds big. Blaze sounds dry. They almost, they don't do a lot of double tracking with him except on the choruses. And so, especially in some of the verses, it just sounds so sparse. It just sounds like a demo. It sounds like, well, Steve Harris is the producer. This album is self-produced, which means it's produced by Steve.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he doesn't know what to do with this guy. He's got this baritone vocalist who is nothing like the other guys that have been in the band. And he doesn't really like have a good way of integrating him, and it sticks out even more because you just have this thin, squawky sound. Let's
isolate Blaze on his, What do you think of him just as a vocalist? You know.
I mean, he's talented. He is a good singer. He's good in the Wolfsbane stuff.
Yeah.
Not a band that I love or anything, but like he sounds strong there.
Yeah.
And if you go through his solo material following this, he's good there too.
Right.
Like Silicon Messiah is the album that he did right after this. So to give away the game a little bit, I mean, this album did not do very well. Blaze was having a lot of trouble on tour on between X Factor and Virtual 11. You know, he was being tasked with singing all these songs that were Bruce songs. A lot of them were way out of his natural range. It was actually like affecting his vocal cords. And when the offer for Bruce and Adrian to come back in, you know, came up, they, you know, were sort of like, look, man, we got to do this. They did sort of give him a hand with management for a while and made sure to get him set up to do the Silicon Messiah album. But, and so he did that album. I think it came out in either 99 or 2000, like right around the same time as Brave New World.
Right.
He sounds way stronger on that. And that record has way better production than this. It's like not exactly to my taste, but it sounds professional.
You know, it's the finger kind of gets pointed at him a lot, right? And I think a lot of it's not his fault, right? A lot of what we're hearing.
I would say almost none of it is his fault.
Right.
I really like, God bless Steve Harris, but like it's mostly on him.
Yeah.
Blaze is brought in 95. He's the new guy. This is his second album with the band.
Yeah.
The last album did okay. I think it actually even had a #1 in Scandinavia and maybe Germany. This album did worse, but the last album was not an overwhelming success. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I think it would make sense that you'd sit down and be like, all right, like not everything's working about these vocals. You're a talented guy, but there's a few easy things they could have done. The one that everybody says is they could have tuned down.
Yeah.
And not drastically, but you know, most Iron Maiden songs are played in E or E minor. They could have easily just gone down to D or D flat and given him more room, more in his range. This is the 90s, so like all these fucking bands are tuning down. You know, like it wouldn't have even been like that crazy for them to do it. It's like almost crazier to me that there are no Iron Maiden songs tuned down at the time. Yeah. And it would have kept the songs the same. It just would have been played in a lower tuning that, you know, wouldn't be damaging this guy's voice. That's the #1 easiest thing that I would say would make sense. I mean, Steve Harris clearly does not do a good job with like the music production side. It doesn't help his singer who's got to carry the band. I don't, like I said before, I don't think Steve really knows what to do with this guy. There's like passages, like the first song on this album is Future Real. It's like one of Blaze's signature songs that he still plays in concert to this day. It's a really pretty good song.
Yeah.
And it's like there's parts where he's almost like getting drowned out by the music in the way that he's delivering it. And he probably should have been more assertive. He should have said like, I don't really think this is working, or I'm not hearing or, you know, whatever. But also like the producer guy who's like on the 11th album of the band that he's in charge of should have been like, we got to try some other shit, you know, like we got to do something.
So many questions, Chris. I've been listening to it a lot, obviously a lot, you know, and it kind of irritates me. I feel kind of bad for him when I listen.
Well, it's like a missed opportunity. And I think part of the reason, I don't know about you, but part of the reason I feel so bad about it is he's super gracious. He's like never said a bad thing about these. And he shouldn't say bad. They gave him a great opportunity. he did everything that he was able to do with it. You know, arguably, it's like what sustained his career.
Yeah.
Um, and I really respect that he's never trashed these guys. He's never said like, "Oh, well, they should have done this for me," or "Oh, they should have done that," or "I didn't get it." You know, he to this day is so gracious. And the only thing that I've read, and it's secondhand, some people have been like, I read I've mentioned this a couple different episodes. There's this book that Popov put out where it's interviewing different artists about different Iron Maiden albums.
Okay.
And one of them, in one of the Blaze albums, they're talking about, he just sort of is like, I should have known better to ask them to drop the tuning. That's not even like saying anything bad. Like that's so nice.
Yeah.
Whereas on the other side, you have a band like Judas Priest, where to this day, Tim Ripper.
Oh, yeah, different thing, but
well, so he's still doing, but he's like such an asshole about it. He's constantly complaining that the albums got deleted from the catalog, that they don't play his songs or pay respect to his era. And it's like, dude, you are a fucking replacement. Blaze is, you know, still thankful and still on good terms with these guys from, you know, by all accounts. So
I guess the question.
So I feel worse for him because he has been so cool about everything.
Yeah. I guess the question we have to ask or just bring up is like, if it hadn't have been Blaze, who would they have got in? Who could they have got in like 1995? I've thought about this and I didn't really come up with any good answers myself. I did think
the Halloween guy gets tossed around a lot.
And I kind of had the idea of John Deverell from Tiger Pantang, but I quickly tossed that idea out. It's ridiculous. That wouldn't have worked. He's a good front man, looks good, but wouldn't have suited Iron Maiden at all. I think just an unknown like Ripper Owens, right, would probably have been.
I think you know, it's funny because I think they wanted a British guy. They didn't, which is, I think maybe the original Fates Warning singer was a possibility.
All right.
And that got tossed because he was American, and the Halloween guy got tossed because he's German.
Right.
I mean, there's like a million guys that they could have picked, and it's ballsy that they picked Blaze Bayley. I think Wolfsbane had been out supporting Maiden at some point. I think there's a world. I mean, both of these albums, I think all we're going to talk about is there was a better way. Like for every problem, there was a better way. I think there's a way they could have made a record with Blaze Bayley work.
Yeah.
And I do think they tried. And I do think they were like in a bad spot anyway, because it's like 1995 to 1998. Like, there's no worse time to be a band like Iron Maiden.
Yeah. Another thing is, we touched on it in the other episodes, but about like, you know, the punkiness of Paul Di'Anno. I don't recall anybody kind of mentioning that it could have been, but like the kind of punkiness of Blaze. You kind of learn from Wolfsbane, rock and roll band, you know, leather jackets, bit punky, bit rough, raw. Nobody ever kind of sort of says that there's some punky songs on like this album or the X Factor, because I picked up a couple of things actually, which I'll get to later, that stood out for me actually, especially on this album.
I think that's a good point, and I think it's like the production is so sterile and like, you know, it's funny because you think like, oh, bad production, that's punk, but it's like, it's weirdly the opposite. It just sounds like a high school band demo.
So thin. It's like you almost want to like break it in half. It's like so, but there's records that are good that sound like that, but this just doesn't work at all for Iron Maiden. Tough. I mean, someone like us who kind of maybe were used to like kind of new wave records and thinly produced records, even for me being kind of used to that kind of sound, I still can't stand it. It bothers me.
It's really jarring, and it's jarring because they just don't know what to do with any of the moving parts that they have to work with.
Yeah.
Including the like ever-present keyboards.
shall we get to that? We've kind of covered everything about. We'll kind of probably get back to a few things. We want to go through the songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. We mentioned Future Real. What a great song. Again, I'm like, what could have been? There's no like double tracked vocals in the chorus or anything.
Well, there's two better versions of this song, Mike.
I mentioned that, yeah.
One is on, you know what? I have to look it up.
Well, there's the promo video version, right? With the kind of the crowd, the fake crowd footage.
So let me say there's two better versions of this. One is by Iron Maiden without Blaze singing, and one is by Blaze on I believe it's on the As Live as It Gets LP. This is from 2003, and at that point he had put together, he had his own band. He had done one or two studio albums. I assume he was touring mostly Europe and South America, but in those places he was very accepted, and he was doing a few different songs off these albums. And the reason that I like the version on As Live as It Gets is because they harmonize the guitars in a very Iron Maiden way, which one of the many faults of
not do that, Chris.
They don't do it. It's insane. Why would you not? It's like Michael Jordan being like, I refuse to dunk. I will shoot 3-pointers all day, but I will not dunk the ball. Like, just do the thing, man. Like, it's what you were born to do. It's fucking weird.
It's a song. A punch. It's a good song. I like it, but
it is a really good song, and the version on this album is a good version. But the version on As Live as It Gets with Blaze Bayley's band from that time is the second best version. And I'm sorry, I am an Iron Maiden fan first, and the best version is the version with Bruce singing, which you can find, I believe, as a B-side on the Wicker Man 12-inch, or if you find the full like Ed Hunter tour soundboard, which maybe was on a bonus CD for radio or something like that to promote the game. It's definitely out there. You can find good quality studio versions of this song with Bruce singing, and I mean, it's like peanut butter and chocolate. Like he is. I like him better than Blaze. I'm not here to cut one guy down.
Yeah.
Because I think this is a good song, and it is a signature Blaze song, and without his version, there wouldn't be the Bruce version. There wouldn't be anything for Bruce to follow along to.
True.
So
that will come again later, more so.
Yeah, yes, we will. But point being, I think it's a good song. It sounds terrible on this record, although it's one of Blaze's better vocal performances, given what he has to work with and the conditions he's working under.
Right.
But there's definitely other versions you can hear if you're interested. If you feel like us and you're like, this could have been better. You have options.
Right.
Do you feel the same about it? Are we on the same page?
Yeah. I mean, okay. But yeah, absolutely. And then Angel and the Gambler.
Yeah, possibly the most controversial Iron Maiden song ever.
Oh, man.
Right?
Okay, let me show two records. The Who Face Dances and The Who It's Hard. I'm just wondering, was Steve Harris listening to a lot of these records when he was in the barnyard? But it would have been an okay 3-minute pop song, like by The Who, on that one of those records. But a almost 10-minute song on an Iron Maiden album, not so much. Unbelievable.
There was a fight about this song.
Oh,
Steve felt that this should be the first single.
That's right.
And Rod Smallwood was like, you're fucking out of your mind. And you know what? Smallwood is right.
Yes. Well, the single version is shorter. I used to have the picture disc 7-inch. It's like a 4 or 5 minute version, but still kind of.
The single version is shorter. All right, I'm gonna list the problems with this song.
Go ahead. Ready?
The first, as we've established, is that it's basically a 10-minute song for no reason. This is 3 or 4 parts that just run over and over. You know, we just talked about Alexander the Great, which is a 9-minute song and earns those 9 minutes. This song does not. I would love to ask. If I could ask Steve Harris 3 questions, one would be, tell me everything about Angel and the Gambler and why you did all of this. The second problem, so the song starts off and it's like a nice, you know, hooky riff. You're like, okay, we're
it's jolly, right? If I was at the pub at 2 a.m. and this came on, I would probably stand on the bar and sing along to it until the end.
Right?
Yeah, you would too. You would too, right?
I would, but I would be sober. You would not.
Yeah.
Then you hear some Hammond organ, and it's like, oh, this is kind of interesting. They're doing like a Deep Purple kind of thing, and it makes sense because you're like, well, Yannick Gers is in the band, and he was in both the Gillan band and White Spirit, you know, 2 heavily, you know, tied to Deep Purple bands.
Yep.
And the song starts going, and then what I can only describe, if you've never heard this song, as if you bought a Casio keyboard out of the toy aisle in 1987 and you flipped it to the saxophone setting and you played the saxophone sound, that is the sound you would, or maybe the horns. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it's in this song. It doesn't even add anything. It's just him like, banging on that one note.
Really kind of almost like a show. It's like, like that.
It is what it's like, Mike. I couldn't bring myself to do it, but you're right.
But it's funny because that Vardis, that new wave British heavy metal band, they kind of started to progress and they had like horn sections on their 2nd or 3rd album, and they kind of do a similar thing with the, you know, but with a real brass section, and that's kind of hard to love too. So I kind of was wondering, like, which is better, this kind of cheap keyboard sound, or do we really want like a full popping, like brass section doing this with the kind of swinging, like saxophones? I don't know, like
Golden Earring has some horns, right?
Yeah.
I bet you, if I'm right and I'm not imagining that, I bet that's where he got the idea. That seems very Steve Harris of him. Be that as it may, this is horribly executed. And for what it is, it's just the one fucking note. I mean, you got 2 guitar players, man. Like, just have one of the guys. I don't understand. I don't understand why it's there. It takes me right out of the record.
It does. And that's side 1. That's side 1 done. There you go. That's it.
Well, and so and Blaze comes in and he's doing a pretty good job. He's working as hard as he can with this thing. And they get to that chorus, and it's clear that they thought that they had, like, this is, they got a message here. They've got a hook. They're going to really sell this thing. You know, you see the music video and they're all holding, you know, the signs that say Savior and stuff. And it's corny, but also they repeat it so many times.
I started counting. I just gave up.
It's unbelievable.
It's
the number.
like
Whereas like
they're kind of taking the piss out of you. It's like,
it seems like a joke. And there's even an easy departure point where the guitar solos in this song are surprisingly good.
Yeah.
You get to the guitar solo section and you're like, okay, all right. And you're kind of thinking like that's going to be the end of the song. And then it just comes back up and there's like another 3 minutes of this Don't You Think I'm a Savior stuff. And I mean, this song's a disaster. And it's crazy because there's definitely a better way to do it. You know, this could have been a 4-minute, even 5-minute song that worked, that, you know, that would have been worthy to release as a single. Also, this is definitely their worst music video.
Yeah.
You ever seen it?
I don't remember it. I have seen it though. And I remember because I bought the picture of this single, and then I watched the video too, and kind of like, but
it's all like 1990s CGI, and they walk into like an alien bar, but like everything is rendered like a PlayStation graphics.
or like a PlayStation 1.
I mean, it looks, it's funny, but like it sucks. It's just I again, like, I put that on Steve Harris, and this is his song too. There's nobody that to blame but him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. So that's side one done with.
I will say, hold on, I'm sorry. It's an interesting failure.
Yeah.
And it's more interesting than most of the second half of the record, to give the game away a little bit.
Okay.
I prefer, if I was going to pick first half or second half, I'd take Angel and the Gambler, because it's fascinating to listen to this happen.
It is. Yeah, it's a train wreck. You can't look away.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
You done?
I got it all out, man.
You want to say that one more time? Okay. Done. Side two. Lightning strikes twice. Takes a while to get going. You know what? The riffs in this kind of have a little bit of a killer's feel to it.
Yeah.
But again, it's a victim of the production. It's great. It's got a great like Dave Murray solo. Like Dave Murray doesn't really do bad solos, so it's kind of an obvious point to say. It's actually not too bad. The chorus is okay. It would have benefited with some, layers on the vocals, but it's not bad. It's not too bad. Not too bad. It's only 4.5 minutes. It's okay.
Pretty good song.
It's acceptable. Yeah.
It's an acceptable song. They could probably trim about 45 seconds off the beginning and get us there quicker.
They're sowing the seeds of what will come later when Bruce comes back, and they do that a couple of times on this.
So a lot of people consider these albums to actually be the start of the new style of Maiden.
I made a note of that actually. That's.
But there's again another problem I have, and this is a production problem. Mm-hmm. He does the lightning strikes twice thing, and you can hear that they've had to punch each repetition individually, because you actually hear it slightly cut off at the end of, I think, the word twice. Which is a classic thing that happens on like shitty punk records, where like of the modern era, where people are trying to sing fast over, pack in too many words, and you can't actually fit them, so you have to do them separately and punch them all in. And the thing that also gives that away is that you don't hear at any point the singer taking a breath. This song must have been torture for him to try and do live, and there's an easy way to do it. You could have done the vocal, the lightning strikes twice thing, then you do an instrumental repetition of it, because he's following the exact pattern of that guitar riff. So he's just doubling basically what the guitar riff is. So what would have worked is do a call response with the vocal and the guitar, and it probably would have helped his ass out live. It's so whenever I hear it, it's distracting to me, because I'm like, well, this is like, you can hear the artificiality, because like literally nobody has enough breath to sing that whole section,
right?
Naturally. And that just sort of like, that sums up the whole like record to me. It's just like, how, like, why didn't you guys just like plan this a little, or why didn't someone just say like why didn't Rod Smallwood just say like, Steve, I think you need a producer, man, like a guy besides you.
And I mean, Dave Murray writing credit too.
Yeah, it's a fucking good. I mean, you know how I feel about Dave Murray writing a song.
So yeah, lightning strikes twice. It's okay. And then we're already at the centerpiece of the record, a future classic, The Clown's Man. You know what? I cut this song. I can't believe it's shorter than The Angel and the Gambler.
Unbelievable.
How about that? By like about 40 seconds. There you go.
Well,
what do we say about The Clown's Man? It went on to be like a a staple of the live show with
Classic.
and Bruce.
This is a true Iron Maiden classic.
Yeah.
They played it on the most recent tour. They played it in the Ed Hunter tour. They played it on the Brave New World tour. Like, and this song is loved by Iron Maiden fans. This is like absolutely accepted into the canon. It's an amazing song. It's a little bit regrettable title. They're talking about 13th century Scotland or whatever, and they, now forever have to explain that every time they play the song.
Okay. Klansman with a C, right? Not a K.
Yeah. But in the United States, people hear Klansman and they're like, what'd you say?
Yeah.
I mean, now more than ever.
I mean, I was thinking about this, and you did mention Bruce's version of Future Real being superior, blah blah blah. I'm like, he really did make this song his, And if you think about it, like Dio, who is technically a better singer than Ozzy, he never was able to make any of the Ozzy songs his own.
I think he didn't want to.
He didn't want to.
And one thing I respect about this whole Bruce Blaze, Bruce again situation is I feel like Bruce was willing. I mean, I've seen pictures of those guys hanging out. I don't think there's any animosity. And I think
he must have liked the song, right? He must have liked it.
I think he was like, I'm gonna, make this a permanent part of our band. I'm not just gonna forget this guy. And it's fucking cool that they've kept this album in print. Like, this is a album with a lot of flaws.
Yeah.
But it's never gone. I mean, I'm sure there's been points where like the CD's been a little bit hard to get, but like they repressed this in 2017. There it is. That's really admirable that they did, stand by the work that they did, warts and all, and that they recognize that this song is so good. Probably, I would say this is probably the best song by Maiden, like from the 90s to present, in my personal opinion. I do prefer the Bruce version.
Yeah.
The Rock in Rio version is sort of the one I like the most.
Yeah.
But man, this is a perfect Iron Maiden song. Yeah. This absolutely captures everything about them that makes them great. Yeah. And I do think that Blaze does a good job with it here, with everything he has to contend with, and with a song that it seems really hard to sing for anybody, especially out of their range. He really does work for this.
Yeah.
Great fucking song.
Great song. So that's side 2. Lightning Strikes Twice, Klansman. So we've got one more disc to go. So side 3, When Two Worlds Collide.
What did I write about this? I wrote meh.
Well, I was thinking that, but this is one of those ones where I don't want to keep repeating myself, but it really is a victim of the production, because there's some nice guitar melodies. It's quite doomy, I thought. It's kind of doomy feel to it. There's big gallops, but there's kind of a doomy atmosphere to it. What else? Kind of makes me sad. It's got a sad feeling to it. But you get those the woes again. There's a woe section on this song. But
this is also the second half of the record is when the keyboards really start to pick up a lot.
Yeah.
And they're like constantly using. It's like they're using like the stringed orchestra setting, and it's always like running right under the guitars, and it must be because someone was like, it sounds really empty on this record because the guitars sound like shit.
But there are some actually kind of cool twin leads on this, and some nice clean guitar too.
I mean, the playing is good, the composition is good. I think this would be like an album cut on Brave New World, or maybe even Dance of Death.
Yeah.
It drags here in part because Blaze doesn't have the range of Bruce. No. I think Bruce would work harder on this song, but also like they wrote this song and it's not really like attuned to like his strengths at all, and that's the other sort of problem with it. um I don't know. It doesn't really work for me. It's okay. There is some good guitar playing on it. I feel like this album in particular, like Yannick is really like showing off a lot, you know. At this point, like he's a real like ensconced member of the band. He's not the new guy anymore.
Right.
So you know, it has that going for it, but not in my top 50 Iron Maiden songs.
What about The Educated Four? This is, you mentioned like Brave New World. This song does remind me of kind of like proto Brave New World kind of song.
I don't like this. My
problem.
problem.
Thing about this song, it actually has some like nice backing vocals on this song.
I don't like the backing vocals. I know I said that they should give him more opportunities to do that, and I know this guy is trying, and I know that this guy has an impossible task, and I'm not trying to disparage him. The backing vocals are very grungy.
A little bit.
A little bit in the Nickelback zone for me, which again is it's just it's so weird. I don't really know like how they came to that, because that's not even really like how his solo material is delivered.
Well, I think it's kind of telling that stood out to me on this record. So, oh wow, there's something to kind of like, oh, there's something happening here. There's some backing vocals, good, nice. You know, it's like, because it's kind of telling.
I will say, you can say there's something to talk about on every one of these songs.
Yeah.
This also has the same, to a lesser extent, problem as Angel and the Gambler, where it just, they repeat that chorus so many times. Time will go.
Yeah. It's a 6 minute, it's almost 7 minutes. But saying that, the next song is even more guilty than maybe even the Angel and the Gambler. Like
this song, this is the Brave New World sound to me, especially the first 2/3 of this song.
Oh man, don't look to the eyes of a stranger. Even the title kind of annoys me.
I never will after hearing this song. I don't want to think about it.
Got the cheap sing, like a nice mid-pace section, horrible chorus, and it's got like "Don't look to." There's a point where it's like, "Don't look to," and it just goes on and on and on. It actually annoys me even more than the Angel and the Gambler.
One thing about Blaze, I mean, you can't really say that he's not experienced at this point, because Wolfsbane did 2 or 3 records. This is his second record with Maiden. I presume he's done other work besides that. But he's not as sophisticated at times with the way that he phrases and arranges vocals. And so you run into this problem where he does a lot of stuff where he sings right on the beat. And for a band like me, I mean, it's impossible not to compare him to the other guy, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, but even Paul wouldn't really do that. And that's okay. But that would be an area where if you had a dedicated producer, you know, who could really work with this guy, and say like, you know, let's figure out your strengths, let's figure out where you need help, and then let's make it work. You have, because he has the ability. But I just feel like he was adrift without really like a lot of help, and you know, and a huge monumental task. And so you get a song like the Klansman, where clearly he spent a lot of time on it, but then you get Don't Look in the Eyes of a Stranger, and it's just like he's just singing the riff pretty much, and it's not a very interesting riff, and it sounds terrible.
Yeah, it's not good.
I would say I like this song less than the Angel and the Gambler.
Me too. Yeah.
Angel and the Gambler has some good parts, and the shitty stuff is very interesting. Like, you don't hear that very often. This is just a boring song. I hear that all the time.
I did pick out one thing that kind of made me laugh, actually. It's like there's a part where it kind of speeds up.
The end, yeah.
The drumming on that, honestly, it's straight up like Abrasive Wheels, like Partisan, like boom, 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 like.
This is a really weird part of the song. So I wrote here, the end is way more interesting, and it goes into like a UK 82
Right?
kind of drum beat.
But it was just me. I was like, no, nobody's going to notice this. And I was like, Jesus, it's like total like Partisans abrasive.
Well, it's so fast, and it's bizarre because it sounds like another composition. It has nothing to do with the first part of the song, and the guitar stuff is really frantic too, where it's just like, what are they doing? Like, what this whole record, you listen to it and you're like, what are they doing in these songs? It's so strange. It's so like, it's so aimless in a lot of ways, and it's so just like throw stuff at the wall. But then you get like a couple of songs that are just like really impressive and up to the caliber that you would expect. And then other songs, it's like, I guess this album is a failure ultimately, but it's an interesting failure. An interesting failure is better than mediocrity.
I mean, honestly, this album is more enjoyable to listen to than some of the ones we talked about. Even though
Absolutely.
even though I kind of know it's worse, it's not as good. I still kind of find some weird pleasure in listening to it. I don't know.
Well, okay, because I think what that comes from for me
Mm.
is you like, it's one thing to just hear like the second half of A Matter of Life and Death, where you're just listening to these guys just spin the wheels, make the sausage, and like not really try anything. And this album, every song, somebody is trying something.
Sure.
It doesn't always work, but like, for instance, the end section of Don't Look in the Eyes of a Stranger, like you're never going to hear Nico and Yannick play that way again ever. And you don't hear them play that way before. It's just this weird moment where you're like, do these guys even, are they like, do they know what they're doing?
I was just having a really good time with that last night. It was just like, and there's not even any like any fills. He doesn't do any fills. Just like
It's so strange. And it just sounds so. I guess we're used to Iron Maiden being so polished,
yeah.
even on their boring records. It's so like, um, I mean, they have a producer. It's so produced, and this really sounds like a demo to me. Like there should be a virtual XI, and then the bonus disc should be this stuff. Yeah, and you're like, oh, what were they trying on that original? Don't Look in the Eyes of a Stranger.
Yeah, and the version of yeah, I can picture it.
It's really weird. It's a really weird, interesting album that doesn't really work, but it's more fun to listen to than like some of the others.
Yeah, and then that takes us to the last song, "Como estáis, amigos?" How are you doing, friends? The Lennon and McCartney of Iron Maiden, Yannick Gears and Blaze Bailey wrote this song.
I think it's nice that Blaze and Yannick have a song together, because
in the last episode I did say that I don't really I never really kind of Google or look up like individual songs. And I don't. I did in the last episode for one song, and this one I was kind of struggling for something to say about it. So I just off the cuff I Googled it, and you know what? I found out that this song was written for soldiers who were in like the Falklands War between Britain and Argentina. I didn't know that, and as soon as I read that, it really made me sit up straight, because my father was in that war, and so it immediately took me back to like 1982, and the song just took on a whole different like feeling for me. Like I was like looking it up while I was listening to this song. And it was kind of weird. It kind of brought back all these memories of like going to the dock and like all the soldiers coming back from Argentina. Weird. It's like took me right back to that moment. So that's my personal kind of take on this. I don't like the song at all, but it was quite, but it was just a surprise to find that out, and it kind of totally changed my mood. And I look at it differently now, and I hear it differently now. I just wish it was a better song, but weird.
It's a pretty nondescript song. I like, the thing I like is that it is dedicated to the people of Argentina.
Yeah.
And I like that because I like when bands know who their fans are and give them a tip of the hat.
There you go.
And especially at this time, Iron Maiden was not big in the United States, not big in England, still loved in Europe, and and really loved in South America. And I think if they came out and played this song today, anywhere in South America where they're speaking Spanish, I think the place would go crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not a very good song. There's like nothing really descriptive about it. It's weird that it is the last song on the album, but I think what I do like is that I'm sure that the people, Spanish speaking countries took a song to heart that has that in the title, and also those countries never turned their back on Iron Maiden. And I think that that's kind of why it exists as much as to like address the Falklands War. And for that alone, I like that it's there. And if it's gonna be on any album, it might as well be on this weird fucking album.
That was just unexpected kind of personal thing for me, having kind of like lived through. It was weird. It's only like a 10-week conflict, but it doesn't. I mean, I thought it was. It seemed like years.
Yeah, well, for you, how old were you then?
Well, it was
in 82,
so like 15, 14, 15. So,
dude, 10 weeks when you're that old, like that. So that's the 2.5 months.
Well, I remember we got the phone call in the middle of the night, and it's like, Dad gets up. He's like, "Well, got to go," and off he went. Like a lot of my friends, like dads at the time, like didn't come back. So you can kind of see why I was like, "Damn,
yeah,
I didn't know it was about that actually." So, yeah, no. So,
all right.
On that cheery note, I think we can round this up. It's been fun talking about this album, and I kind of like do enjoy listening to it. And it's kind of hard to kind of give it a score, actually, taking all these things into consideration, what it might have been. But I'm going to give it a 5.5.
So here's two things I will say. I'm fairly confident that out of the 16 Iron Maiden albums, this is my 13th favorite Iron Maiden album.
Oh, you've kind of given the game away. That's cool, though. Well, people will forget by the time.
Oh, it's just a preview.
Just a little taste.
Not only that, I'm going to give this album, because I gave Brave New World, I think, a 6.
Brave New World?
I give this a 6.5.
Ooh.
And I say that because there's the Klansman alone gets this higher than it, because it is such a stone cold classic, one of their best songs, and because this album is so much more enjoyable, because you get highs and you get lows and you get highs again, and it is entertaining. And when it's good, it's pretty good. So I give it a 6.5, and I hope we'll continue to sort of disabuse people of the notion that Blaze Bayley did something wrong. If anything, he deserves your respect. If you want to, I would say, I think Silicon Messiah is worth a listen. It's very of its time, but it is heavy metal. It's not new metal or anything like that. He does a great job singing on that. Those first couple Wolfsbane records are solid, and check out that live record where he does some of these songs, and where they sound. I mean, the production on that live record is so much better than this. Just to hear a good version of Future Real, which is, I think that's his signature track. I think the Klansman really became like a Maiden song, it's an Iron Maiden song, but Future Real, I feel like that's Blaze's song, and I recommend hearing it, because that's a good song.
Cool. All right, next time.
That's right. Yeah, Somewhere in Time.
Seventh Son. The Seventh Son.
A long week, Mike.
You even said Brave New World when you were talking about Brave New World. That was a nice faux pas. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. That was a fun episode, fun album. Check it out. Maybe give it another listen if you kind of haven't listened to it for a while, and see if you've changed your mind about this record. So until next time, thanks for watching as always. Until next time, stay healthy and stay please.